Welcome to the Operate Intelligently podcast. This is Tony Butler. I'm joined with my host, Bob Papadou Bittman. Bob, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Tony. Hope you're doing well. And it's really a beautiful day outside today. And we're so fortunate here in North Carolina. The trees are all blooming. The pollen is starting to fall.
Don't overdo it, Bob.
My allergies are acting up, so it just feels like a normal March to me.
Not everybody's as fortunate as we are, right? I know there's still a lot of snow, a lot of cities covered in snow out there in the Midwest and up north.
Well, Tony, today I'm really excited because we're going to do a little different program than what we've typically done in the past again. And we have with us in our studio today Chris DeJunas, who is one of our application engineers around our IT suite, our IT product line. And we affectionately call him around here DJ. So DJ, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And if you ever get to meet DJ in person, there's an experience here that you're going to fall in love with him because his energy level is just kind of over the top. And when he gets involved and when he gets wrapped up, DJ, this is supposed to be a 20-minute webcast, okay? And but he's very passionate about what he does, very knowledgeable, and DJ, we're just really excited that you're here with us today. And what I'd like to ask our audience to do, and you've heard me say this before, that we need to have a tighter connection within our facilities group and our IT organization. And I fully believe that we have the same problems, the same issues, the same challenges. That's why this makes this so applicable today. We just may be talking a different vocabulary. And so we wanted to bring Chris in today because we do address IT infrastructure issues and problems and solutions here at The Dude. And I wanted to talk and get his perspective on that. And maybe we can dive into a little bit of that, those vocabulary differences a little bit, DJ. So we're just really glad for you to be here today with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tony and Bob. I appreciate it. And I'm glad you brought it up, the vocabulary point of view, because earlier this week we actually did a webcast with one of our partners, and the theme that we presented on was automation, which I know something from the facility side is you're living and breathing every day. Oh, yeah. How can you be more efficient? And as I was preparing for the webcast, it really just struck me that, you know what, this is something that we're going to be seeing more of on the automation side, on the technology.
Yeah, I think it's a common theme in a lot of different departments or organizations. We have to do more with less. And I think automation is one of the keys to doing that. One of the challenges that we've talked about them being similar challenges with facility teams is they're losing staff and they're expected to do more. What are you hearing as you're talking to clients and folks out in the field? What are some of the challenges they're experiencing when it comes to the tech world?
Yeah, and a lot of it is going to be the same. The resources really are not increasing across the board in education. I don't think it really matters what department you're in. And I'll actually bring up a stat that we used from a government publication related to educational technology that we presented in the webcast we did earlier this week. But 25% of technology departments have seen an increase in their resources or in their budget over the past 3 to 5 years. What that really means is 75% have not.
Yeah.
So if 75% have not, I think we can all agree probably 100% have seen more technology, let's say Chromebooks, laptops, mobile devices. More of those are showing up at their doorstep each and every month. So if we're not increasing their resources to handle these increases, they are still being expected to provide the same level of customer service. How are they going to do that?
You know, you talk about the 25% that are seeing an increase, and that may just be due to the fact that 5 or 6 years ago, they were really decimated with a lot of budget cuts across all of our vertical lines. The crash in 2008 just put infrastructure on hold and people weren't being backfilled. So it's not surprising to me that we're seeing that some of it's starting to come back, but it probably still is a deficit to what is really needed.
I imagine too, with the increase of technology that all of us have, especially I know our students, my daughter is 15, she has an iPhone, She wants a tablet. I haven't gotten her one. But those are things that she's using at the school. My daughter, my youngest daughter, 7, she actually, they have classroom iPads. So it's hard for me to even believe that's happening. They're not given the resources to manage a lot of that.
Yep, that technology mix. I mean, you talk about 3 different devices right there.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the public sector, when you're talking about public K through 12, for example, we're talking about one technician being responsible for over 1,000 devices.
Oh, wow.
And that's the small end. I'm sure there's educators out there right now in the ed tech department that laughed when I said 1 to 1,000 because they would love if they only had to deal with 1,000 devices. When you compare that to here, for example, I mean, how many people do we have in our IT department providing support to us? They maybe only have 1 to 25 ratio on the high end of devices they're responsible for. So you're exactly right. And back to Bob's point, he hit the nail on the head. As the money came back into the infrastructure side, we've seen all of these devices pouring into the schools and the institutions across the board. And it's interesting because all of a sudden there's these new funding programs, right? You've got Title I, you've got E-rate, special grants locally now from corporations or groups that want to help provide. Well, now we're kind of coming to an end of that era. And now we're being asked to be responsible for what we're doing. Show what we did with that. We gave you all of this money. Now we need you to prove that you've been using it equitably and responsibly across the district.
Well, it's a huge challenge, and it's a huge challenge for even our facility people that have to support some of this infrastructure. Maybe it's new wiring, maybe it's space for some infrastructure items and so forth. So understanding, and our facility folks are also being challenged with a lot of IT infrastructure knowledge and how do I respond? Do I give my technicians an iPhone? Do I give them an Android? Do I give them a tablet? What's the best device? I'm seeing a great turnover. I get a device today and tomorrow it's obsolete. Can you talk a little bit about the challenge out there of obsoleting technology and how fast it's changing?
Absolutely, and it's directly impacted some of the offerings that we have here at the Dude. Tony can relate. Just a few years ago, we had an asset discovery tool used in the IT side of things that was something called an agent-client relationship, meaning I need to install something on every device that I want to discover on this network, and that's fine. Now, when you get into public education, and I've got 10 different operating systems, and I may have an 11th showing up based off of whoever decided to buy the newest machines, that becomes too much to handle. That becomes very bulky, time-consuming.
Very cumbersome.
Yeah, and getting back to, you may not even have the skill set of employees to handle that type of operation. As a result, we did away with that offering, and now we go with more of a lightweight network scan. It handles a lot of different operating systems. It can scale and evolve with some of the other ones out there because it's using a series of industry standard scans and probes. So not only do our customers have to deal with that, but what we do to support them and who we can bring to support that is directly impacted as well.
DJ, how do you see organizations as a whole handling bring your own device types? I mean, I know even here at the Dude, a few years ago, we were all provided a cell phone. If we had problems with it, we went to the help desk and they helped us work through those issues. It was a pain if we wanted to change a plan or add somebody to it. And so they just went away and started giving us an allowance for our cell phone and said, here, you go take care of it yourself. What do you see out there as far as supporting and changing of those devices? But I still need it to work with all my applications that I have here at work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a real challenge that all IT departments are dealing with. And one of the more interesting examples that I can think of is at our user conference here in Raleigh last year. We had public, private, higher education, but we also had a lot of our senior living, some of our other facilities, employees and directors at one of the courses I did. And an example I'd never thought of, somebody in senior living was now in a competitive situation with some of their other senior living homes in the area because they were being asked, what sort of technology can you provide to your customers?
Right.
So we're talking about an older generation now who's even coming into
Now watch
facilities.
it. You're talking about me.
Hey,
Come on.
I thought I handled that pretty well.
Yeah, you did.
But somebody like yourself, right? The more you start moving up, you're going to expect more from facilities because you've had this type of technology available. So this gentleman was in a situation where 5 years ago, he would have never thought that how much bandwidth can you provide to your clients, to your customers in this senior living facility would be a conversation he was having, trying to gain their business.
Well, you get into situations like that, and where families are separated from one another. Grandma's in a home somewhere. Mm-hmm. They want to have FaceTime or Skype with their grandkids every night, and you've got a proliferation of organization that has multiple of those. How do you handle all that streaming at one time and allow a good experience, I think, as much as anything.
Exactly.
Right there.
And that's one of the things, and you asked, what do you see about the bring your own device? And the question is always, what are you trying to do? In their case, for senior living, it was always going to be a bring your own device situation, right? They're not going to be providing devices for the customers. There may be a lounge or a lab or something available, but it's funny, what the demand really was not for the individual user. It was that their grandkids were more likely to come visit them if they were able to bring the devices and still be able to check online or get on Twitter or any social media while still visiting. So it was a perspective I had never really heard before, and it got great conversation going.
That's pretty cool.
I think it's interesting too. You mentioned 5 years ago they wouldn't even be thinking about this. So times have changed fast. Technology has changed, and how we use it is changing. And I can't imagine what we're going to be talking about in the next 5 years when it comes to the challenges we're facing, networking, how quickly we're delivering services to our folks who are actually staying in our facilities.
Because it's interesting, on the opposite side of the coin, education's been in this space for a while with the technology coming in.
Right.
They've needed to get more done with less. So we've almost seen the opposite response. From an education standpoint, bring your own device sounded amazing for a while, right? There's some people right now who are cringing just thinking about the experiences that they went through with bring your own device, because what we found was it really hammers the bandwidth. You lose control over management of those devices. If you don't have a platform that can help you manage the traffic, the bare minimum, the traffic that's handling there, if I can't protect my end users from the traffic or protect my institution from the traffic that's being used by my network or on my network, it really opens a lot of doors, and there's a lot of information available in education that we can't have leaking out.
I'm curious what decision makers or people who are making choices on budget, what's their understanding of the challenges that their organization is facing when it comes to maybe controlling the network or issues and challenges that come with opening up the network to BYOD?
Yeah. And the budgetary conversation does get interesting. I spend almost all of my time trying to convince people, bottom line, 200 Dells that you may purchase looks a lot cheaper than 200 Lenovo's. But the total cost of ownership for a program like that is really going to flesh out over time. And that block of Lenovo's is actually going to cost less based on the maintenance and based off of the repair that's going to happen. The same is true for your network, except it's a living entity, essentially. So budgetary is a component, but you can't be blinded by it, because when you end up having to ask yourself, is this open network that I may not have the necessary tools or skills to fully manage and secure, is that worth losing data or potentially some sort of ransomware experience, that's happening across the board now. So it is a tough conversation to have. Luckily, they can get funding for some things. Nowadays, E-rate funding has been changed a bit. Under the previous administration, E-rate funding was updated to include Wi-Fi infrastructure to go along with the physical infrastructure to public institutions. So as a result, people who are very savvy about getting this funding and using it now are able to save a bit on the infrastructure side, and they're rolling those savings into purchasing the devices from a district level, because it does allow them to maintain that security and integrity from a more granular standpoint.
DJ, you kind of addressed there the idea of really it's total cost of ownership, and we talk a lot about that in the facilities area of evaluating, and so often, particularly with our public sector, first cost versus total cost of ownership, and helping people understand that kind of the long term. And we've heard a lot of stuff going on in the industry around security, and you just mentioned that. And it used to be not too long ago that when we heard of hacking, it really was just people seeing what they could do, just experiencing, just getting in. And then we find out then people are starting to do some things that are wrong, immoral, illegal, and getting into that. So we've had to take a whole new look at the security aspect of it. We're gonna treat that in another session, both from a physical and a IT infrastructure security issue. But if you can just touch briefly about that aspect of it today, because you talk about senior living. If people are there and they're getting into their banking online, a lot of people prey on older people to try to give them account information or get into their accounts so they can drain a lot of money, and maybe they weren't as sharp as they once were to understand those things.
Absolutely. And you bring up many interesting points there. I mean, I got the call from my uncle a few weeks back asking if I was in jail because somebody had called my grandmother.
Yeah.
Saying that that your grandson's in jail, he needs to be bailed out. So, I mean, it happens even on a basic technology phone level. Luckily, he lives with her, so he's able to take care of that. But when you bring that to a digital perspective, and we're being asked to do so much in our daily jobs, day in and day out, the thing everybody overlooks is still one of the biggest security holes out there. Don't click on a link that you don't know where it came from. It's that simple. And I've seen some educational institutions taking some very interesting, almost fun type of approaches to help educate their customers. So what they're doing is they're taking a basic application, and they're basically just hosting it on a website. The application doesn't do anything. It might just pull up a picture. But what they're doing is they're sending out emails to all of the teachers, faculty, and staff. And they can tell whoever clicks on the link, it's going to install that application on the back end of the machine. And they do it after having a meeting and going over best practices and warning them about these types of things. Well, I mean, even with a solution like ours, I can very quickly run a report and see which machines that software is on. That's a list of who clicked on the link. So then you call those people in for a second meeting and you let them know, hey, look, it didn't do anything malicious this time, but here's a list of you that did click on the link. We have proof of it. We need to stop this sort of behavior. So it's an eye-opening moment.
Is this kind of a, hey, you idiots?
It's a very politically correct way of doing it, right? Yeah. So it's having the ability to track that and see who did it, because we know where these holes exist, but at the same time, it's very easy to click on an email that what you thought was a reputable source, because it's so easy to fake something like that nowadays. Right. We can't keep up with all the different methods out there, but for somebody to infect most of our workstations, they're still going to take a few basic approaches, either clicking on a link, relying on you putting something into a drive that you shouldn't, or you downloading something you shouldn't have. So, and that's the same in education.
So, DJ, what did you do to get thrown in jail?
That's for the next security related podcast.
We'll go there later, right? But I hope you just said, no, I wasn't in jail, but you can send me money anyhow.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's my address, not somebody else's address. Well, this is an extremely exciting conversation, and we've kind of come to the end of our time, but I just want to open up the idea to our audience, that there's more things alike between facilities and IT, some of the same challenges. IT might be really focused on the security aspect of the internet and band traffic and all that kind of stuff, while our facility guys are really focused on security, a physical security aspect, how people gain access into the facility, and a lot of very similar things, just as kind of we talked about on the front end of the program, a different vocabulary.
Yeah, I think a lot of, their mission of each organization or of each department, facilities and technology or IT, is to serve the people that work within that organization that are in that facility. So I think there's a lot of overlap.
Exactly. And so really appreciate you being here today and kind of sharing from that perspective. And what I'd like to just challenge you folks out there to do today is go to your IT folks after you've gotten done listening to this podcast together, and go to lunch and just talk about some of the similarities, some of the things that are very similar in the challenges that you have, and the approach to your work, and the need to automate, the need to document, the need to create strong processes and procedures, and the ability to understand the knowledge base that you need in your organization, so you can go kind of as a united front to the organization, as opposed to being a fractured and doing it kind of independently, and learn from each other, because there are so many things that are alike and not different. So again, DJ, thank you for being here. Tony, good to see you again.
You as well.
And we will continue this discussion from a more in-depth security discussion at a later date. So thanks for being with us today, folks.
Thank you all.
Thank you for listening to the Operate Intelligently podcast. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a review, and you can even email us at dspodcast@dudesolutions.com.